Hallo und welcome to Hanovi Global Network. Guten Morgen. Ich hoffe es geht dir gut. Schönen Sonntag. I hope you're doing well. Happy Sunday. So today we are going to discuss the much to do about what happened at the ending of the budget wrap-up in Parliament and finally resulting in the opposition leader, the Honorable Emmeline Pierre, Dr. Keith Mitchell, and the rest of the NNP crew exiting the Parliament. Now, I don't understand why we're making so much a fuss about this and trying to put the blame on and tarnish even more Dr. Mitchell's image. But when I say I don't understand, I mean it's not appropriate to do so because things like that happen all the time in all types of parliaments all over the world. This is nothing surprising. It is a way of protesting against something that you believe was not done right, and you have an absolute right to be able to do that. It's okay to walk out as a form of protest. But I do understand that Dr. Keith Mitchell has seemingly become the Donald Trump of Grenada, so that everything goes wrong, or everything that seemed to go wrong, he gets the blame for it. And we understand this is actually an orchestrated approach. This is not by accident. This is mainly orchestrated by socialist leftist remnants of the PRG who have an axe to grind with Dr. Mitchell. And the thing about it, jump high, jump low, they always refer to the fact that Dr. Mitchell has been in office for 23 years and everybody's harping about his 23 years. Now, Dr. Mitchell didn't stay in office for 23 years by accident. Keep in mind, and I want to make this very clear, it was the people of Grenada that voted him into office. So he didn't steal the election, okay? He didn't by some mishap ended up as Prime Minister of Grenada for those years. But you guys seem to say this, that, like this is a bad thing, or this was a wrong thing, or this was a curse. So let's get that straight. He stayed in office for 23 years because he was elected by the people of Grenada to represent them. That's number one. Secondly, if you know the history of Grenada, it is quite clear that post-1983 politics, Grenada needed what I would call some sort of bulwark against the remnants of the socialist Marxist regime of the PRG. Grenada needed someone who was tough, who was strong, who was a center-right leader or right-leaning leader to protect Grenada from the leftover socialist Marxist regime. Without Dr. Mitchell and many others to guard Grenada, we would have ended up in a lot of problems. And that is why, because Dr. Mitchell represented, what was standing between the socialist Marxist remnant of the PRG, and the heavy influence in Grenada, Dr. Mitchell was the one that has always been standing in their way. He has been like a thorn in the side of their waist. He has been like a thorn in their lower backs. And that is why every opportunity they get, they would try to discredit him. They would try to say all sorts of awkward, negative things about him. So even when Chester Humphrey on the Bob Report tries to paint himself as some voice of reason and tries to appear that he's unbiased, he still, in very subliminal ways, blames Dr. Mitchell for the incident at the Parliament. Now, if we truly want to be intellectually honest, we have to understand, how do you analyze an event? One of the best ways to understand an event is to see the genesis of the event. What caused the event? So let's look at the genesis of this event in Parliament. The genesis of this event, started when Minister Cornwall got up, to finalize, to wrap up his budget presentation. And of course, we do realize he was pretty much ambushed in the process of doing so. So he didn't get a chance to do so. So in a sense, it was actually a belittling of the finance minister. So it tells me a level of disorganization. And of course, we understand the Rule 40 and the Prime Minister has the prerogative or the ability to do the final presentation. But this is something that should have been done prior. So one, it doesn't look this messy, okay? And all of this that transpired in the parliament subsequently could have been avoided if the NDC administration had made proper discussions among themselves and decided, hey, look, as the Prime Minister, I am going to wrap up the debate. I am going to wrap up the budget debate. If that was done prior to getting into Parliament, none of this would have happened. But then it was quite clear that the Finance Minister Cornwall was ambushed in Parliament, okay? And rightfully so. Dr. Mitchell had a valid point. He had a valid point. He didn't have a problem with the Prime Minister wrapping up the debate. His point of contention was, hey, look, Minister Cornwall got up to wrap up the debate. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of doing that, he was ambushed. So Dr. Mitchell said, no. This is not the way things are being done. As he rightfully said, every member of the parliament are equal members. And I want people to understand the separations of powers in government. Of course, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell is the leader of the executive branch of government. Now, that power and authority in the executive branch of government doesn't automatically transfer into the legislative branch of government, which is the parliament. And that's what people need to understand. Not because he's the leader of the executive branch of government does not mean he's the leader of parliament. Absolutely not. That is a check and balance that every minister of parliament or every MP in parliament has equal powers. And that is what Dr. Mitchell did in trying to educate them. That is the check and balance in government. That is why you have separation of powers. You have the executive branch, you have the legislative branch, and of course you have the judicial branch, which is the court system. Okay? So, Dr. Keith Mitchell was very much within his right to object procedurally about what was going on. This is not strange. This is not unusual. And one thing I do agree with Chester Humphrey about is that for some reason, since this has started, it seems that the Speaker of the House is hell-bent on proving some point to Dr. Mitchell. Hell-bent on proving some point that he has to manage him, so to speak. Which is actually unnecessary. As Dr. Mitchell also rightly pointed out, he is the arbiter of Parliament. He is supposed to be the one who creates some sense of balance, a sense of order, a sense of fairness. But if you come across, and this was so obvious. This is not something that was, hidden. He wasn't even executed with some sort of grace or some sort of, cunning. It was just obvious that there might have been possibly some sort of discussion. And then all of a sudden, the speaker comes back from recess and says, well, it's within his right to, let Dr. Deacon Mitchell wrap up the debate. And that is the case. That is, of course, the case. Ultimately, he can make that decision. Ultimately, he can do that. But procedurally, Dr. Mitchell had a valid point. So if the Speaker of the House, which again, I do agree with Chester Humphrey, if the Speaker of the House handled this differently, guess what? None of this would happen. But he got antagonistic, and of course, that only escalated the situation. I think there must be some form of mutual respect from all the members of Parliament. And the Speaker has to lead, and he has to lead and project a certain level of respect himself to actually gain the respect of all the members of Parliament. If he comes across or shows some form of favoritism, that's going to sabotage the whole process. That's going to sabotage, in some respects, his authority, even if it's just perception. So, of course, again, the socialist Marxists who we understand. Again, more I delve into this, there's more clarity and more clarity. And I understand fully, just as I suspected when I say the socialist Marxists have hijacked the NDC. Because again, as I told you, Dr. Keith Mitchell was a bulwark and is a bulwark. He is the only thing, and he's the only person standing in the way of ultimate power and revival of these socialist Marxists and the minions and the people after them who romanticize the PRG period. And in some respects, it proves to me, notice how the Prime Minister always making references to Maurice Bishop. And I know he probably has some sort of ideological or fantastical idea, a romanticized idea of the PRG government. But what he may fail to realize, that praising Mars or talking so much good things about Mars does not make the people around him happy. Because these very people weren't Mars supporters. Quite to the contrary. So if he truly understood the context of the revolution, and especially what led to the demise of the revolution, the Prime Minister would have been more cautious in what he says and how much he promotes Mars Bishop. Because he may think that that is something that would endear him to the people around him who are socialist Marxists. But he may fail to realize that the people around him aren't Mars-style socialist Marxists. These are hardcore ideologues who to this day, like Chester Humphrey, are unrepentant. And even with evidence to the contrary, are still unrepentant. Even to the evidence all over the world showing that this socialist Marxist doctrine has failed communities, has failed societies, and will never work. Yet still, these ideologues hold on steadfastly to their socialist Marxist doctrine and is hell-bent on influencing and embedding it in Grenadian society and continuing it and romanticizing it to make it look attractive to the youth. But it's a way of consoling themselves. They realize in some respects, they are the ones that are responsible, allegedly, for the demise of the regime. So it's a way to say, you know what, it's a form of repentance for them. It's like, you know what, let's hold on to these ideas. Let's try to make these ideas seem like they're so pristine. Let's turn to some sort of cultic religion. Let's misrepresent the past so we could find something or someone else or some external force to blame. But do not be fooled, Grenada. And I would say that the people who were on the quote-unquote other side has not done a good job of enlightening and educating the Grenadian youth. So what you see happening is that the biggest and loudest voices, and you know they have loud voices, all of these socialist Marxists who are currently hijacked the NDC administration and the NDC party. So these are the only voices that you're hearing. I guess the quote-unquote Morris side is so devastated, still reeling from, the heartbreak that they themselves do not stand up to these hardcore socialist Marxists. They don't stand up to them. And probably there might be some sort of intimidation or fear still, you know what I'm saying? Because they felt, they were cunning, masterful, cunning people. The Morris crew would have been outwitted by these fanatical socialist Marxists. So probably there's still some sort of intimidation, some sort of fear. Probably, I don't know. But it was no mark of brilliance. Their triumph in 83 towards the end was no mark of brilliance on their part. It was naivety in certain respect. And it was brotherhood and love that they themselves never believed in. And today, you see the same thing happening. These masters of deceit, these cunning, unrepentant socialist Marxists are now today trying to hijack Grenada through the mechanism of the NDC, are trying to have some socialist Marxist revival in the nation. They're trying to corrupt our youth into having them believe that there is some socialist Marxist golden era in the revolution. They, my friends, very cunningly have infiltrated the NDC and is trying to revive socialist Marxist doctrine in Grenada to the detriment of our people. I say, just as Keith Mitchell was a bulwark against these people, I say the next generation that he has taught need to stand firm against these intellectually dishonest political bandits and protect Grenada from ultimate demise. Because there's an old saying, lepers don't change their skin. And if these people get total control and absolute control of Grenadian politics, then you guys are doomed. You guys are doomed. And I want to scare you. Yes, I want to scare you. The historical record is clear. These people cannot be trusted with political power. And again, it's like a soldier crawling on the ground towards his target. They have crawled politically, and slowly they are creeping closer to the ultimate power over Grenada and Grenadian minds. So the youth of Grenada, do not be hypnotized or deceived by this voodoo political theory wrapped and packaged as socialist Marxism. Stand firm with all your might, all your political might, all your intellectual might. Guard the minds of your youth against these people. A word to the wise is quite sufficient. So in some respects, they ambushed the kindness of the Grenadian people. Totally ambushed. And that is why now, verbally, politically, we have to unmask these socialist Marxist remnants that has hijacked the NDC party. You have to confront them politically. That is the only way, intellectually, socially, culturally, and politically, you are going to defend yourself from these socialist Marxist political bandits. Now, the assault on Dr. Keith Mitchell will never stop because he is the bulwark against these people. But that is why it's extra important that the next generation, that the people who come after Dr. Keith Mitchell should be as vigilant, should be as serious, should guard the Grenada temple, political temple, against these unrepentant socialist Marxists. It would be devastating to allow them to capture the upper echelons of power. And that is what they're doing. I want you to see this for what it is. They have surrounded the centers of power. They've gotten close to the throne of power. They've gotten close to the upper echelons of power. So they themselves can project that power. But I'll let you know that these people, these people only serve the upper echelons of power when it is in their best interest. And the very day that the upper echelons of power do not serve their interests anymore, do not satisfy their insatiable greed for power, guess what? They will turn their backs on that upper echelon of power. They will turn their backs on that throne of power. They've shown it before and they'll do it again. Grenada and Grenadian youths, you've been warned. You've been warned. Remain sober. Remain vigilant against these political bandits. They'll put on a cloak of sheep, but deep within them, they're nothing but ravenous wolves. A word to the wise is sufficient.